quick update on this steering wheel install that I shared with everybody a few weeks back. So just to recap, I've put a NRG hub on here with a quick release also attached. So I take this Sparco wheel off. You can see it's a quick disconnect, but I also keep my cruise control and the horn works, and then that's all attached to the NRG hub. The problem is whenever I'm going for a drive and I turn my wheel, about the time it gets to the 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock position, the horn always goes off. Sometimes it stays on for a few seconds, other times it just sporadic, just a little chirp. And so I finally figured out, I think, what's going on, and I want to share this with everybody and see if you have some suggestions of how I can fix it. And now I've got this all tore apart, I'll start to explain what I found. I've had this apart probably a dozen times, trying to figure out what is going on, thinking I had a wiring short with the cruise control wiring that I worked on, but finally figured out, at least I'm pretty confident. I don't have airbag, so there's no clock spring, but you got these three kind of spring loaded, here you can see contacts, and those ride on inside these three grooves on the NRG hub. Well, this middle contact, you'll see I've tried putting a little bit of shrink tube around it. You'll see why here in a minute. There is a little bit of adjustment with this screw. I even wallowed out a little bit of the sides of this plastic housing so I could move it back and forth more. And you can undo these screws on this plate and even adjust the plate a little bit. So I've tried repeatedly to get these contacts exactly centered inside these grooves. But you can even see the trace in the grease I have on here. The outside ring and the inside ring are centered, but the middle ring, if you can see it in here, the contact's rubbing up against the two black walls, and those are metal, those are not plastic. So I'm basically shorting out the contact to the other contacts, and when I turn it just to a certain rotation, it'll start to touch those walls, those raised ribs of metal that are connected to the copper rings. So you're basically always shorting out. Initially, I thought, where you can see kind of at the 3 o'clock position here, those metal ribs have a gap in them in one spot around the whole circumference here. There's just one spot where there's no wall here. So what I thought was happening was, and it does kind of line up, the dot would be at 12 o'clock when your wheels are straight. It's kind of lining up to where I was noticing the horn would go off when I turned the wheel, kind of right here. Not every time, but some of the time. So initially I thought that was the problem, that one of the contacts was kind of crossing over in that gap and touching one of the other copper pads. So what I did is, I thought there was actually initially some type of manufacturer's defect up in there, how the wires were soldered to the copper contacts or something. So I purchased another one of these, bought another one, thought I'd return one later, and then I had the problem again. So I realized it wasn't really that there was something wrong with the part, but I still thought that gap was causing my problem. So you can see here, the one that I just took out of the car again, I filled those spots in with some JB Weld, and I sanded them down so that it wouldn't cause any issues, and thought, well, that will keep my contacts from popping over in that gap to another pad. That didn't do any good. So you can see that, I filled that in. Still didn't work. So if I get a rough measurement of the diameter of these little contacts, you can see I'm basically at 4 millimeters. Okay, so then if we look at this rib, .2 millimeters. So you have almost no clearance at all the way this NRG hub is made. And that's just not enough for the whole rotation of the steering wheel to not ever come in contact with one of those metal dividers. If those had been plastic, there'd be no problem, because it wouldn't connect the contacts. So if we compare that to our factory steering wheel, let's take a look at that. Here's my factory steering wheel, and we'll check this middle groove here. 6.3 millimeters. Check it in another spot. Oops, let's get it all the way in there. 6.2. So you have over 2 millimeters of clearance instead of 0.2 millimeters of clearance. And you can see there, those contacts go around, but these are plastic ribs that separate the copper pads. So even if you rubbed up against it, it's plastic, it's not going to conduct over to the other trace. All right, so back inside, I have taken a little file and I have tried to file down all around that center. I've tried to clean up the point. I tried the shrink tube around the edges where only the point would touch, but nothing has worked. It's just so tight in there. I basically need a donor switch like this out of another car that I can take out of here and mess with it and see if I can get them thinned up substantially more. I don't know, I'm imagining they're hollow inside at some point with the spring in there, so I don't know how much I can remove. But basically there's no way that hub can be functioning correctly when they sell these. It's for the Foxbody Mustang. I have the right part number. It's a low profile, so your steering wheel doesn't come out forward more with the quick disconnect attached to it. I gotta find a way to make that a lot thinner of a contact to fit inside that groove. So if anybody has any thoughts, or if you've come across this, I've searched and searched on YouTube trying to find videos about people with horn problems with NRG hubs, but I haven't found anything yet. I've seen a lot of videos where people just cut the wires out, or they don't use the horn at all. I don't know if it's because of this reason, or they just didn't care, didn't want it, but I want to keep all my cruise and horn, and let me know what you think.